They sang happy birthday over the phone while they were at the restaurant without me. I could hear the music in the background. I could hear my granddaughter laughing. And I just sat there in my kitchen, holding the phone with both hands, nodding like it was fine. Like I was fine. That was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't said a word about it since. But I'm going to tell you what really happened, all of it. My name is Carol. I'm 64 years old. I live in a house I've owned for 22 years in a quiet street in Ohio where the neighbors still wave when you back out of your driveway. The maple tree in the front yard is older than my children. I planted a rose bush the year my mother died. It comes back every spring without being asked. I worked for 31 years as an office manager at a regional insurance company. I kept that place running. I knew every file, every deadline, every name. I trained people half my age how to do their jobs and then watched them get promoted past me. I'm not bitter about that. I made peace with it a long time ago. Some hills are not worth dying on. I raised 2 children mostly on my own after my husband David passed. He had a heart attack at 53. That was 11 years ago now. I still set 2 coffee cups out in the morning sometimes. Muscle memory, I suppose. Love doesn't know how to stop just because a person is gone. My son's name is Michael. He's 38. He lives about 20 minutes away with his wife, Renata, and their 2 kids, my grandchildren, Lily and Owen. Lily is 9. Owen is 6. Those children are the reason I still decorate for Christmas. The reason I keep candy in a glass dish by the front door even though I never eat candy myself. My daughter, Sandra, is 35. She lives closer, maybe 12 minutes. She's been through a divorce and came back home for a while, stayed with me for 8 months a few years back. I didn't complain. I cooked for her every night. I let her cry on my couch. I didn't push. I just left the light on. I tell you all of this not because I want sympathy. I tell you because I want you to understand what kind of woman I am, what kind of mother I've been, what kind of life I've built on my own 2 hands. And I want you to understand what it costs me to stay quiet. My birthday is October 12th. I've never been a person who makes a big fuss over birthdays. David used to bring me flowers, just whatever was at the grocery store, wrapped in that plastic sleeve, and that was always enough. After he was gone, birthdays became quieter. I'd usually have a small dinner with the kids, sometimes a cake. Nothing extravagant. I never asked for anything extravagant. This past October, I turned 64. About a week before, Michael called and said they were planning something. He used that word, planning, and something in my chest lifted. Something small and hopeful that I usually keep pressed down because hope, in small doses, is fine. Too much of it just leaves a mess. He said they wanted to take me out to dinner. Somewhere nice. That Sandra would come too, that it would be the whole family together. Lily and Owen would be there. We'd make a real evening of it. I said, that sounds lovely, and I meant it. I bought a new blouse. Nothing fancy, sage green, with small buttons, the kind that drapes well. I tried it on the night before and stood in front of the mirror for longer than necessary. I looked like a woman who was being taken out to dinner by her family. I looked like someone who was loved. I had my hair done that Thursday at Patty's salon downtown. She's been cutting my hair for 16 years. She gave me a little extra volume on top because she knows how flat it gets in autumn. She didn't charge me the full price. She said happy birthday and squeezed my shoulder when I left. I came home and waited. My birthday was a Saturday that year. I woke up early the way I always do, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the window light coming in, that pale October gold that only lasts about 20 minutes before the clouds move in. I had my second cup. I read a few pages of my book. I fed the bird outside, a small house finch that comes to the feeder on the back fence. I've never named him, but I recognize him. He's missing a small patch of feathers on his right wing. By 10 o'clock, I'd heard nothing. By noon, nothing still. I texted Michael, morning, looking forward to tonight. Light, cheerful, no pressure in it. He texted back at 1, hey Mom, we might be running a little late, I'll call you. He didn't call. Sandra texted it too. Happy B-Day, Mom. Birthday cake can't wait for tonight. I read that text 4 times. The exclamation points felt sincere. I believed them. At 4 o'clock, Michael called. He said, and I want to get this right, because I've turned it over in my mind so many times, he said. Mom, so, we're going to head out a little earlier because the kids are getting restless and we got a reservation at 6. We thought maybe you could just meet us there. I said, of course, what's the restaurant? He told me it was Carmine's, a nice Italian place on the east side. I'd been there once before, years ago, for a colleague's retirement dinner. I said, I'll see you at 6. I hung up. I put on the sage green blouse. I touched up my lipstick. I picked up my purse and my keys and I drove myself to the restaurant on my birthday. They were already seated when I arrived. The table was full: Michael, Renata, Sandra, Lily, Owen. There was a bread basket. There were drinks already poured. Lily had a coloring book open on the table. Owen was leaning against Michael's arm with that heavy, tired lean that small boys do when they're already past their patience. There was no empty seat with a bow on it, no flowers at the place setting, just a chair. I slid in next to Sandra. She hugged me sideways, said happy birthday, handed me a menu. And dinner was fine. It was fine. The food was good. I had the chicken piccata. The children were sweet to me. Lily drew me a picture on the paper tablecloth, a house with a sunshine, and wrote Grandma in big block letters. Owen fell asleep against me in the back half of the dinner. I held him without moving my arm for 40 minutes, because I didn't want to wake him, and honestly because holding a sleeping child is one of the few things in this life that still makes me feel like something is right with the world. There was a cake, a small tiramisu from the dessert menu, not a real birthday cake, but they told the waiter and he brought it with a candle. They sang. Sandra filmed it on her phone. I blew out the candle. I smiled. And inside, somewhere very quiet, something ached. Not loudly, not with drama, just the way a door aches when it doesn't quite close right. That small, persistent gap where the wind gets through. I drove home alone. Michael had driven separately. Sandra had driven separately. I drove home alone in the dark on my birthday and let myself into a house with no lights on. I sat down in the kitchen in my good blouse and I thought, this is all right. This is just how it is now. This is enough. I told myself that. I almost believed it. The credit card statement came on a Tuesday. I don't do online banking the way younger people do. I know I should, and I have the account online, but I still like the paper statement. It comes in an envelope. I open it at the kitchen table with my reading glasses and a cup of tea, and I go through it line by line the way my mother taught me. You know where your money is. You don't let it surprise you. I opened October's statement on a Tuesday morning, 11 days after my birthday. I went through it slowly. Utility bill, grocery store, gas, Patty's salon, that was the birthday hair. Coffee shop where I sometimes go on Friday mornings. Library fine, $2.40, I knew exactly what book that was for. And then, Carmine's restaurant, $312.47. I set the paper down on the table. I picked it up again, read the line again. My card, my credit card, $312.47 at Carmine's on October 12th. The date of my birthday dinner. I sat with that for a long time. I'm not a woman who jumps to conclusions. I turned the information over carefully, the way you turn a piece of fruit over to check every side before you decide whether it's any good. I thought, maybe there's an explanation. Maybe there was a mix-up with the check. Maybe Michael grabbed the wrong card by accident, but he doesn't have my card. Maybe Sandra, she doesn't have my card either, or shouldn't. I got up, went to my purse, took out my wallet, counted my cards. My card was there, right where it should be. It had not been missing. It had not left my possession. I sat back down at the table. $312.47. For 6 people, that would be about right. Chicken piccata, pasta dishes, children's meals, drinks, tiramisu with a birthday candle. That would be exactly about right. Someone at that table had my card number. Had used it to pay for my birthday dinner, a dinner I was driven to separately, seated at with no ceremony, and told to enjoy. They paid for my own birthday dinner with my own card, and nobody said a word about it. Nobody called, nobody texted, no one mentioned it at all. I looked out the kitchen window at the rose bush. It had gone bare for winter now, just the canes, just the structure of it, holding its shape even with nothing left to show. I put the statement face down on the table, and I went and made another cup of tea. I didn't call anyone. I want you to understand how deliberate that was. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't avoidance. I chose not to call. I chose to hold the information inside me like a stone and carry it slowly, because that is what I do with things that matter. I don't react, I respond, and there is a difference. I am 64 years old. I have buried a husband. ND, I have raised 2 children on a single income. I have sat beside my mother's bed for 3 nights while she left this world. I have been in rooms where real things were happening, terrible and beautiful things, and I have learned that the woman who walks out of those rooms standing up is not the woman who screamed the loudest. She is the woman who was quiet long enough to know exactly what she needed to do. So I was quiet. For 3 days I was quiet. I went to the grocery store. I raked the leaves in the backyard on Wednesday afternoon, the whole yard, every corner, even around the rose bush. I watched a movie on Thursday evening, one of those old ones I've seen before, because sometimes it's easier to live inside a story you already know the ending to. And during all of that time, I was thinking. I was thinking about the last 3 years, about the small things that had added up so slowly I hadn't seen the weight of them until I was already bent under it. Michael borrowing $400 until next paycheck in March of last year, I never brought it up again and neither did he. Sandra using my streaming password without asking, which was nothing, truly nothing, except it was the same gesture as the credit card, wasn't it? The way it's easier to take from someone who doesn't make you pay for it. I thought about how I had always been the soft place to land, how I had made myself soft on purpose, because the world is hard enough and I wanted my children to have one place where they didn't have to be careful. But there's a difference between being a soft place and being a place people don't bother to be careful in. And somewhere along the way, without anyone deciding it, I had become the latter. I thought about what it means to love people and still have a line they cannot cross. By Friday, I knew what I needed to do. I called my bank on Friday morning. I spoke to a woman named Deborah who was very patient with me. I explained that I had not authorized a charge on my account and I needed to understand how it had been processed. She walked me through it. The charge had been made in person with the physical card present, or with the card number and expiration date and security code. I thanked her. I asked her to flag the charge. She said I could dispute it officially if I wanted to. I said I'd let her know. I hung up and went to the table where I keep important papers. I found the card statement. I found a yellow highlighter and I highlighted the line. Then I took a photograph of it with my phone. Then I put the statement in a manila envelope and wrote the date on the outside in my handwriting, which is still neat, which has always been neat. Then I opened my laptop and I checked my account more carefully, all the way back to July. There was one other charge I didn't recognize. A subscription service in August, $14.99 a month, had been running since August. I'd missed it because it was small and had a name that looked like it could be any number of things. When I looked it up, it was a streaming platform, one Sandra had mentioned getting into. $14.99 times 3 months, plus $312.47. I wrote the numbers down on a piece of paper and I looked at them for a while. I wasn't angry about the money, exactly, or not only about the money. I was angry about the assumption, the assumption that I would not notice, or that if I noticed, I would not say anything. That my love for my children was a kind of blindness they could count on. That was what hurt. That my love had been read as negligence. That I had been read as someone who could be used without consequence. I spent the weekend doing something that some people would think was too much, but that felt, to me, exactly right. I wrote it down. All of it, not as a letter, not yet, just for myself. I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, and I wrote out what I knew and what I felt and what I wanted. I wrote for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet except for the refrigerator hum and once, a car going slowly down the street outside. The October light came through the window and moved across the table as the afternoon went on. I've always been better on paper than in person. In person, I am the kind of woman who says it's fine when it isn't, because the moment moves too fast and I lose the words I need. On paper, I find them. On paper, I am exactly who I am. I wrote about David and how he used to say, "Carol, you give people more rope than they've earned." I wrote about the birthday, the empty house that night, the way I sat in my good blouse in the kitchen in the dark and told myself it was enough. I wrote it was not enough, and I am allowed to say so. That line took me a long time to write. I sat with the pen, not moving for almost 10 minutes before I could put it down. When I was done, I had 9 pages. Not everything in them was for anyone else to see, but 2 paragraphs were. 2 paragraphs, very clear. And very calm. That said exactly what I had seen and exactly what needed to happen. I transferred those 2 paragraphs to my laptop and I saved the document. I did not send it yet. I waited 2 more days because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to read it again with fresh eyes and know that every word was fair. That it was not a letter written from the hot center of feeling, but from the clear, settled place that comes after. When I read it again on Monday morning, it was fair. It was more than fair. It was, honestly, kinder than I had the right to be. I printed 2 copies, put one in the manila envelope with the statement, kept one for myself. And then I called Michael. I called Michael on a Monday evening at 7 o'clock. I knew the children would be settling toward bedtime and Renata would be nearby. I chose that time specifically, not to create a scene, but because I wanted Michael to be in his real life when I spoke to him. Not in a car, not at work. Home, present. He answered on the second ring. I said, "Michael, I need to talk to you about something. Is this a good time to have a real conversation?" He said yes, just a minute. I heard him move to another room, a door close. I said, "I received my credit card statement this week. There's a charge from Carmine's on October 12th for $312.47. I didn't make that charge. Do you know anything about that?" A silence. Not long silence, maybe 4 seconds, but it was the kind of silence that tells you everything. It wasn't the silence of confusion. It was the silence of someone deciding what to say. He said, "Mom, I can explain that." I said, "I know you can, go ahead." He said that Sandra had had my card number from a time several months ago. She'd ordered something online, she'd written it down, she'd meant to pay me back. That night at dinner, the check had come and they were sorting it out, and Sandra had just used the number because it was there. That it was an accident, basically. That they hadn't thought, that they knew they should have said something. I let him finish. Then I said, "Michael, I want you to hear me. I'm not calling because I'm upset about the money. I'm calling because someone used my credit card without my knowledge or permission. That is not a misunderstanding. That is not an accident. That is something that should not have happened. And then no one said anything to me about it for 11 days. Not you, not Sandra, not a word." He started to speak. I said, "I'm not finished." He was quiet. I said, "I am your mother. I have given both of you everything I had to give for your entire lives, and I have done it gladly, and I would do it again. But I am also a person with a name and a bank account and a right to know when something is done with my money. I deserve at least that, Do you understand me?" He said, "Yes, Mom." I said, "Good. I need the $312.47 returned to my account by the end of the week. And I need Sandra to call me herself and speak to me directly about this. Not a text, a phone call." He said, "Okay." I said, "Thank you. Good night, Michael." And I hung up. I sat for a moment with the phone in my hand. My heart was beating harder than I expected. Not from anger, but from something more like release, the feeling of having carried something heavy for a long time and finally setting it down on the floor. My hands were steady, I noticed that. I went and made chamomile tea, which I only drink at night, and I took it to the living room and sat in David's chair, the one I never sit in because it still feels like his. I sat in it that night. It was comfortable. It had always been comfortable. Sandra called the next morning. I want to be honest about that conversation. It was not the conversation I would have written. Sandra cried. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't think I'd mind, which was the line that sat the worst with me. She didn't think I'd mind, but I didn't say that out loud. She said it was stupid, and she knew it was wrong, and she was sorry. She cried more. She asked if I was angry with her. I said, "I'm not angry, I'm hurt. There's a difference." She said she knew. I said, "I need you to see me, Sandra, not just as your mother who will absorb whatever happens. As a person, can you do that?" She said yes. She was crying when she said it, but she meant it. I could tell she meant it. We talked for a long time, about things that had nothing to do with the credit card, about her life and mine, and the years we'd gotten a little sideways from each other without meaning to. By the end of the call, something had moved, shifted. Not everything healed, but the window had been opened. Fresh air coming in. The money was back in my account by Thursday. Michael transferred it. No note, just the money. That was fine. I didn't need the note. I had said what needed to be said. I want to tell you about the morning after I hung up on Michael. I woke up early, the way I ways do, made coffee, went to the window and stood there in the kitchen light and looked at the yard. The rose bush was still bare. The maple tree had lost about half its leaves now. The bird feeder was empty. I'd forgotten to fill it the day before. I put on my coat over my pajamas and went outside in the cold morning air and filled the feeder. The cold was clean. The sky was that particular shade of pale gray blue that happens just after sunrise in October when the world hasn't quite committed to the day yet. I stood at the back fence for a minute with the bag of seed in my hand. I thought I did that right. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't make it ugly or theatrical. I said what was true and I asked for what was fair and I used my own name while I did it. I was Carol the whole time. That was new. That felt like something. Here is what I want to tell you, if you have stayed with me this long. There is a particular kind of loneliness that comes not from being alone, but from being surrounded by people who have stopped fully seeing you. Who love you, maybe, I believe my children love me, but who have let you become a fixture. Like the kitchen table that's always been there. They sit at it every day without thinking about it. They don't wonder if it's tired. I am not a kitchen table. I am 64 years old and I have a history and a name and a body that has carried more than it was ever asked to carry. I am the woman who stood at the graveside of my husband and did not collapse because 2 children were holding my hands and they needed me upright. I am the woman who drove herself to her own birthday dinner and held a sleeping grandchild for 40 minutes without moving so he could rest. And I am also the woman who finally said, "Enough," not with fury, not with drama, just with clarity. That is the thing I most want you to hear. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to burn anything down. You don't have to choose between love and dignity. They are not opposites. They never were. The rose bush comes back every spring because it has deep roots and a strong structure, and because the cold did not break it. It only made it go quiet for a while. I think I am something like that. The Thanksgiving came a few weeks later. I hosted it, same as I have for 19 years. The same tablecloth my mother gave me, the white one with the small embroidered leaves at the edges. The same roasting pan. The same recipe for sweet potatoes that David's mother brought from Georgia, with the brown sugar and the little bit of orange zest. Michael and Renata came. Sandra came. Lily and Owen came. The house smelled the way it always smells in November, butter and thyme and something baking. It was not a perfect day. Owen spilled his juice and cried about it longer than was proportional. Renata and Sandra got into a brief thing about something I wasn't following. Michael fell asleep on the couch before dessert, which is an annual tradition at this point. But Sandra helped me in the kitchen the way she used to when she was younger, before life got complicated between us. She stood at the counter and peeled potatoes and asked me questions about my mother and her cooking, and I told her things I hadn't thought about in years. Stories. Small ones. The kind that seem like nothing until you're saying them out loud and realize they are actually everything. Before she left that night, Sandra hugged me at the door, held it a moment longer than usual. She said, "I see you, Mom." I said, "I know, honey, I know." And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was exactly enough. The credit card is in a new wallet now. I moved it. I know that sounds small, it is small, but it mattered to me. The wallet is burgundy leather, smooth, with a small gold clasp. I bought it for myself. A birthday present, a few weeks late. My account information is mine. My card is mine. My name is mine. And my love is still here, deep and real and not going anywhere. But it has a shape now, edges, a bottom and a top and sides. Love without a shape is just water. It goes everywhere and doesn't hold anything. Mine holds, that's what I want it to do. That's what it was always supposed to do. I still sit at the kitchen table in the morning. I still have my 2 cups of coffee and the October light that comes and goes. I still set 2 cups out sometimes before I catch myself. But I've moved the chair a little. Angled it toward the window more. I can see more of the yard from this position, more of the morning sky and the bare rose bush and the bird feeder where the little finch comes, the one with the patchy wing. He came back last week, first time in a while. He sat on the feeder for a long time, eating, not rushing. I watched him from my moved chair and I thought, there you are. Still here, still coming back. Still yourself. If you're carrying something like this, something quiet and heavy no one has noticed, I want you to know that noticing it yourself is the first thing. The most important thing. You don't have to do anything with it right away. You can sit with it. You can write it on paper. You can say it out loud in an empty room just to hear what it sounds like in your own voice. Your name is yours, your money is yours, your dignity is yours. And you can love people with your whole heart, while still making clear that your whole heart is not available for mistreatment. That is not coldness, that is not selfishness, that is just finally knowing who you are.